Mediopolis, Chapter 19, Strange Directions Show. The family director was coming to visit for the family discussion show. It would be the chance for him to meet the new nanny, childminder Lucy, who just arrived and agreed to stay for a trial shift for the job, and to tell her about some of the challenges that she and the children would likely face, and also to discuss how it was working out so far, with also the older man who had moved in to one of the mother's guest room in the guest wing of the house. He would have a little chat as well to them both before, about some of the new challenges that they would also face. He also had wanted to talk a little about his own challenges with his editing team, to talk to the mother of the mother show. Well, it was also the chance for her to get an understanding about some of the directions where he wanted to take the show and be taken by it too. He only made occasional appearances, yet even he and the other editors of the show were sometimes shown discussing the direction the show should or shouldn't go in, where editorial choices and the different dilemmas of the show were shown as they discussed themselves, they discussed the issues of the occasional discussion shows. The Tors were an older couple, with him being a middle-aged man and also a younger adult with a child who was one of his editors. He brought him along, an older child who did most of the editing work for him. Older Derek Tor, who was thoughtful, examining, careful, cautious, and equally introspective, but also outspoken, having watched back and listened back to an awful lot about the family. He knew them intimately, knew them all so well, and was getting to know the new guests well too, gradually. He knew them as a family, as an overview, and he and his wife had been close to them, directed them for many years. Often knew more about what was going on in the house than the family participants themselves, because their own family edited the footage of the actual show, the editing older children, who'd been doing it for a long time, and the family on the actual family show were too busy living the show to watch themselves and each other always and to know what the footage being edited was. They discussed how and what to show publicly. The directors discussed this in particular with the director parents, who could then conceal the family participants and tell them what was working on the show and what was making the show work out well and what just wasn't working at the moment, and what had to be cut and what had to be kept in the private show only for the subscribers to the secret family show. Some of the content of the spin-off show had worked really well for the family. Some of it had worked against them and just needed to be changed. The whole idea of having a more explicit, confessional series, the secret show for subscribers, of being introduced quite recently, it just seemed to upset some of them though. Some of the regular viewers were annoyed about it too, since perhaps it implied that the ordinary series, the ordinary stories before, the public shows, were only really limited in their revelations, and they really didn't show a bigger picture, and they had been edited, and clearly had edited things out that the new secret show for subscribers would not. That they were only getting the director's cut or a censored version of the family show, when they thought it was a much more open family show before then. Yet the family also had received some support in the idea once it had been put forward, as the confessions, it turned out, were very often quite emotionally and quite triggering, quite demanding and difficult, and not necessary for everyone to view. Seeing someone was in grief, for example, at the severe loss of something. When seeing someone in grief, perhaps, it was not considered something suitable for all the public to witness. It was surely not an entertainment show at that point. And many of the events were either very emotionally sensitive, triggering events that happened, or that might only be suitable for some people who were emotionally capable of understanding and relating to the struggles of the show, or only to people that needed to actually know about those emotional issues. For many people, they just weren't be interested in such a thing. People didn't need to be confronted with traumatic events that they knew nothing about and could do nothing about either, that no one that was closely related to them was either experiencing. What would be the purpose? Neither could they benefit from any of the post-traumatic series, the pre-treatment activities either, without having gone through any of it personally or known anyone intimately themselves. You could be left feeling worse off afterwards. Worse after you'd gone in, after watching one of the episodes, if the show was like that, if it wasn't a specialised therapy show that one actually needed. So the secret shows of the family series were not so much a secret in that sense from the public or society, so much as from the children, perhaps. Some of the content was adult themed, some was graphic in its visuals or audios, and the subscribers had to be of a certain age to be able to access that information themselves, and also had to have an interest to wanting to do it, and something that they felt would be potentially beneficial for themselves. So some family episodes of the soap opera, the family show, were for all of the public. They were for all of the public. Some of the later episodes could only be understood by adolescent audiences themselves. Some of the nightly episodes could only really be understood by older adults. And really, some of the episodes could really only be understood by elders, who could really only understand the morning episodes. Early morning episodes were aimed at the elderly audience. They were slower, they were much more thoughtful. In each word spoken and in each of the silences, they had long, slow dances, slow talks, slower songs as well, and also long, slow, drawn-out silences, until morning had finally broken and a new day finally begun. Yet it was broken in slowly, gradually, getting ever slowly faster, very gradually speeding up in their songs, talks, and even in the silences and the dances that were becoming shorter, so that there were so many more songs or talks, and that were gradually getting faster, or visitors or dancers, or even the silences too. And more sometimes in a busier hour of the midday than in the many hours of the mornings, many, many more. By evening dusk, there were many groups of talkers, singers, silencers, and dancers, many groups that you would meet in many places, and in a short time too, in many places, so that it would be very hard for the elderly to follow. For many older people, used to a slower pace of storytelling or a slower pace of dance. Even for many adults, relatively well with it themselves, would struggle and be quite challenged by some of the fast-paced evening shows. They will be confronted with conveyor belts of groups, group after group, often street after street, just hopping from one street to another street, between one crowded scene, going straight to another, whilst witnessing multiple things going on in busy, chaotic streets, with jammed-in drivers hooting and haunting, and some street drinkers chanting and jeering, couples arguing, crowds drifting about, groups stood, sat, wandering, jogging about, families wandering about, arguing, laughing, all the excursions out of the house. It was almost a sensory overload, too much, that it became hard to follow a consistent storyline within such a busy, chaotic environment with so much going on, or to know if there was just one vision or one eye with multiple different cameras flicking between different views and different people's perspectives. Or it would just seem some series sometimes of random events that happened, sometimes utterly bizarre, often just ordinary randomness though. A couple would be having a serious discussion perhaps. The camera would zoom in on their faces from one of their body cams or one of the room cams perhaps, or if outside on a street cam, a close zoom up. And in the background, perhaps there could be some vulgar graffiti sprayed onto the bus or on the wall, or a giant blue flower with a smiling face that would appear on a flashing advert somehow, that had nothing to do with the family show conversation that the camera was focused upon, but that was in a backdrop focused behind them. Or the conversation that the couple just happened to be happening next to something else utterly bizarre. You couldn't direct the participants where they were or where they were going. Not always in those episodes. They weren't even fully in control of themselves, when and how they were happening and going. So they were certainly not in control of the environment or those around them. And it was there, in these spontaneous acts of love and argument and of everything in between, and of all sorts of calamities and collisions and different coordinated groups doing all variety of things, between some of the family going out, that made it more interesting as a spectacle of all the different things that one was following the ordinary, mundane, ordinary show of the family, but in a strange place sometimes. Seeing the ordinary family in strange, difficult circumstances made it interesting, but it also increased a risk of making it difficult to know and to focus on what was actually going on within the family conversation, making hearing it and seeing it could be hard with all the different strange obstructions that could come between the focus of the camera, the family that were out, and the others that might obscure the view, standing between the camera focusing and the family being focused on. If it happened in a public place, some dramatic argument or discussion or engagement, it could suddenly become potentially provocative, that could equally risk alienating the public as much as it could maybe endear them to them much more. The frenzied, hectic pace and the overwhelming amount of the variable factors when they went to crowded, chaotic outside scenes sometimes then meant the director had cautioned the family that on those pacey, hectic evening shows, that it would be their family show, but out in the world, not in their show world at all, but in an alien world, an outside, unfamiliar world, the more that they visited an unfamiliar society, out in the world of society, and not showing different people in the world and of society in the family show, but showing the family in the world. Telling them they could go anywhere they wanted, of course, said the director, in the public film, anywhere. Who was he to direct them otherwise? Yet he couldn't use any material, or would have to edit it all out. Anything that was too offensive, or just considered too illegal, and could not be used, or was considered perhaps and some incitement to a crime, that could not be used and would be edited out. So they need to be wary about where they were and what was gone on. Though they could blur out different things around them sometimes if it was an especially important thing, but that would cut out the context of where what happened to the family was. He could not show lots of things, though, for legal reasons, and also there were other moral reasons too. He'd explained often to the family, giving them long lists and updating them of what those things were, according to the relevant places that they would be visiting in the different future shows. The family being on the show knew a lot of the legal restrictions already, had been told that too, like not being allowed to slander others when they really weren't sure of what the truth of a situation was, legally. And they were aware of the moral directions too, and had had a great many discussions and debates about those in the family discussion shows. Even if they disagreed with some of the director uncle choices, they all had their moral views, their different points of view, especially the older children, and the mother especially too. They discussed those at the show meetings, so that others could also see the open discussions of why they came to the decisions to edit out some of the material. Yet they could do nothing about other people's behaviours when they were out of the house, especially in particular areas where there would be more risks of outlandish behaviour, unpredictable, spontaneous, even wild behaviour too. They could do nothing about those sometimes, except choosing where and when they went out, and how they went out too. And they were cautious about what they wore, and how they wore it, and how they acted when they were outside, not wanting to encourage anything too controversial or anything that could show the show in a bad light. On the street shows, it did make more interesting viewing though, that which was allowed to be shown for legal reasons. and also for the choice of the family's moral reasons too, that made the editing cut for the final family show. Those encounters that wouldn't be allowed, that caused serious offence without any justifiable good reason, would all have to cut out. The director had reminded the family once more, showing a few of the more recent images of things that he meant, things that had happened recently that could not be shown. Furious verbal arguments, slanderous comments that had been heard in the crowd chanting at a protest that the family had recently gone to. Old Theo had given in his list of names to the mother of the house show, and she was close to Uncle Derek and could also perhaps ask him if he could invite some of them round for the next month's show as visitors on the family show themselves. The mother had said, of course, she could put some effort into making his lists and would actually give it to the director at the right time. She wondered if he didn't spend all day making these notes and lists. He seemed to have lists and lists and lists of people. It was incredible how many lists that he kept in his drawers. There were lists of suspects. What did he call them? Suspected lovers, suspect thinkers, suspect heroes, even suspect victims. She no doubt he would even suspect them. She felt transformed around him sometimes into the suspicious mother, the suspect mother sometimes, as he kind of looked at her, judging sometimes, as if he'd called into question her own mothering on account, and he had never been a mother or that close to many mothers to do so, she'd felt. Like the Inspector Nanny had done so, though she was much more qualified in her judgments of the mothering, so she'd felt much more concerned by that. So far, she'd felt she'd answered many of his concerns, though, things that he was genuinely concerned of, and that perhaps he had a right to know, and she'd given him as fair an explanation as she felt he was owed, and had even become a little more friendlier with him now, albeit as a suspicious friend to some extent, or was it auspicious sometimes? He had even made her question her own role of mothering. Yes, perhaps she did go too far in mothering others, acquaintances she didn't yet know well enough of how they needed the mothering. Just as she had questioned him, just as she'd questioned his fathering, whether he really was concerned and responsible enough as an older man. Naturally, they had to be both defending in their each positions. They defended each other quite well during their questionings of each other. Well, in some cases they did. Yet each had to admit they were both lacking still and in need of some upgrading or reforming or improving in a number of small ways, and a few of those ways were quite significant too. The mother had said she'd put the old man's wish list with all the others, placing it into a book with just dozens and dozens of other similar requests, though she claimed those were only the most recent requests of the wish lists of the visitors that they wanted to see in the family show, saying that there were hundreds of other names on the earlier lists also. The elder man thought, flipping through the book, of hundreds and hundreds of lists of names. Great long lists of desired visitors, activities they wanted to do, places they wanted to visit on special occasions. The mother would try to talk to the director on behalf of the children and the visitors too, she'd said to the older man, old Theo. If one was really in need of seeing someone, rather than just it being something that they wanted, a passing fancy for 5 minutes or so, or just for a few hours or days. Those are only their recent lists, the mother had said. They're always changing their minds, so I add many more lists to update them, said the mother, and she'd remarked this on the elder's shock at the amount of lists that had accumulated in just over the last few months only. Just many chapters of the book full of hundreds and hundreds of requests. If someone had urgently needed to see someone, of course, it was then seen as absolutely necessary, and then it would be different. The mother could invite them on without the director's consent, and she had done so occasionally. Otherwise, she would have to petition him and ask him, and send him the requests and the reason for them. ask him to help arrange one of the visitors. She was not able to do that always herself. That she was seen, if it was seen as necessary, then they would do so. If it was just a whimsical desire, the mother could not trouble the director with it. He who already had so much going on with his time, as it was, that it had to be a serious desire and a serious issue to provoke him, and not just some casual whim. One for the mother to go to the trouble to talk to the uncle director, to Uncle Tor, or for him to be willing to give that time and energy and focus and all his resources to put it into it when all these things were themselves limited. I'm not saying that you have to have spent centuries or meditating for it to be considered, said the mother to the older man, seeing the older man's slight disappointment on hearing this. That he couldn't just see whoever he wanted to see and call whoever he wanted to call to the house family show, that it wasn't that simple. However useful to his studies they might be, or it might provide, that this to his novel or whatever it was he was doing, it just couldn't be summoned that easily. Minutes, hours, and days of devotion are casual desires and fears for the director, the mother had explained to the elder student, awaiting his visitors. The months, years, and the decades, they are his serious desires and fears, claimed the mother. At the kitchen table, with the family busying around them, eating, chatting, and moving, and the director talking to each of them, updating them on his recent edits of their recent family shows. You mean he fears long times, or desires them? Asked the elders. Yes, he both fears and desires them more too, answered the mother. It's the centurions that he really fears the most, and that he desires too. Well, he would fear and love them. The millennials, he would fear and love them much more, of course, but I don't think he really understands them that well, explained the mother now. Longer narratives are frightening, especially when you're meant to be a character within it, said the older man, who felt that he was quite familiar with some of the millennials at least, if not all of them, and that the mother and her director uncle were missing the bigger picture perhaps. But it's the longer narratives that also attractive much more. They are much more attractive because they're just much more dependable. If they've stood the test of time for so long, then they're also the hardest to know though, because they are just so long and take that much more effort and much more time as well, said the older man to the mother. No one wants to be trapped in the wrong grand narrative, that misportraying them, that could be misportraying them and others. Yet no one can bear to live or die without any sense to it all either, without having any grand narrative whatsoever, and a meaningless narrative perhaps. No one could live fully without being part of any grand story, claimed the older man. The elder said this to the mother, going on to say going on to ask why was her directing friend or her directing family so concerned about his decades when the planet, the humans, and life has been evolving for many thousands and hundreds of years. And was it right to only really care deeply about the years that you happen to be alive for and what you just happen to experience? What about all the past lives, the past stories that had made the modern world what it is and what it would be in the future? That it made what your life was today, what your chapter of life is now. Your months, years, and decades mean nothing if not connected to the earlier chapters, the centuries and millenniums, as part of an ongoing story of life and death and rebirth, however long and hard to know it was, and however impossible at times it was to know. The older man had said, almost a little annoyed, huffing and puffing, that it was the story of life, and not the director's story or the family's story that was the important thing, and not even his story or the mother's story that was that important. He was already getting a little angry and annoyed about this so-called director that he'd not heard that much about, but he'd heard enough to be a little concerned so far. He'd not yet even met him. only heard a few of the short stories of him and watched a little. The mother then waited calmly for him to quiet down, gave him her own explanations, saying that her family told her family stories, and that's what they knew. That's all they knew. Their friends' stories and their family stories was all they knew, and that her own story was that of an older dancing mother, because that's what she knew. She didn't know all about life, or all about past centuries or millenniums. She didn't experience or have any memories of that, nor did the children, nor the directing uncle. So how could they make up stories about things they didn't know, places they'd not gone to, couldn't have visited? If it was for all those people to tell their stories, then why should they have to tell them? We can only tell our own stories, however limited they are, explained the mother, slightly angrier herself in response, feeling a little accused that the old man had implied that her focus was only on herself and her family and her director and her show. Yet she felt that's all she knew, herself and her own understandings. The mother had said, saying that the family director only loved and feared his decades of his lives and his deaths, because that's all he knew to love and fear. How could he know about other centuries and millenniums or vast ages of time? Never known. Never mind fear them or love them. She had pleaded all this in defence of her uncle director, saying that he, like the rest of the family, knew little about these distant times and places, hadn't studied those things. He studied society, and their family in particular, as it was in the here and now, not in distant, far-flung, remote pasts, not in ancient or even ancient pasts. He, like the rest of the family, knew little about that, distant times or distant places. He focused just on the here and now, could not fear or love those distant things that he did not understand. Of course not. After all, people could travel to a foreign time or place, yet not know how to express that to others. Even if they had been there, the others they were expressing it to had not. So even if we had met a traveller from those distant times or places, you would need to be able to translate the foreign ideas, the foreign language, into your own understandable ideas that did exist to understand it. How could you, unless you had creative translators and a lot of imaginative thinking and a lot of patience to do that? Can an alien with a knowledge of a foreign planet ever really describe it to humans in a human world? Could a human, if taken to an alien world, accurately describe what planet Earth was like? Or would the alien just be left with the individual's human perspective only? Only that individual's memories of what Earth was? Would a human only have an individual's alien perception of his or her alien planet from all their alien memories and alien experiences, where he could have forgotten many of the things and never have known some of them too, or even chosen not to remember and repress it, and not want to talk about the sadder or more shocking memories? If you want to stay on an alien planet, would you tell them everything about what you had known about the Earth human planet? The older had asked the mother. Feeling a dread that he was going to disrupt the evening with more of his alien talk, the mother was now shaking her head, annoyed, hoping that she could get it over with before the director and the rest of the family and they had to return to the family show talk. When they were alone, perhaps it was okay to talk, yet not if he was going to do it or expect it of the rest of the family, especially at the show family discussion. To discuss it there, not when the director wanted to focus on serious family issues, when he did his brief visits, who wouldn't seriously entertain all these crazy beliefs, and for so long. The mother considered the old man's question, though, and then shrugged, saying, I don't know. It depends on the alien, I suppose. They might feel very sorry for us all, if they knew what was going on planet Earth. I don't know, said the mother, beginning to clean up now around the older man at the table, anticipating that the meeting with the director and the rest of the family may start soon. Or they might even be happy to meet us all, said the older man, musing, thinking about it. Or they might not want to hear any more about humans, and they might just want to keep quiet and hide humanity. I might have to live on as an alien in disguise, if many of the aliens are people-phobic, said the older man. Or maybe even earthophobic, if they're afraid of Earth, all of the earthlings, and not just the people only, speculated the older man, sat now at the family table, wondering about the latest visitor, looking over to him, still greeting and talking to the children, as they looked at the various images of their family shows, the recent ones projected onto various small images. Is that what you had to do, pretend to be an alien, on the other planet shows? Asked the mother now, inspecting over the food scattered on the table, prepared for the later evening discussions. No, not pretend, answered the older man. You learn to live as an alien. You don't think alien planets could be fooled by a person trying to play them, surely? Asked the older man, incredulous now. You've got to work at learning alien languages, alien customs, alien behaviors to really do it authentically, to even begin to start engaging with an alien world. You've got to walk the alien walk, talk the alien talk. You know, you've got to dance the alien dance, dear Danny Dancer, said the elder man to her, and she looked up worried, hoping this alien talk wouldn't invade the later family show talk. The younger woman stopped what she was doing, left the food and the food presentation behind, sitting with him now at the table, and leaving behind the empty bowls and cups and plates, all expectantly, now trying to end the discussion or move it on to the later family discussion. Are they good or bad? I mean, these alien dances, asked the concerned woman, not wanting to provoking, but seeing the elder director was still immersed deeply in his conversation, feeling there maybe was some time to allow him to talk further and find a way to wrap it up soon and to move him on. Good alien dancers, bad alien dancers, and a few mad alien dancers too, almost laughed the older man. And then there were the mysterious alien dancers. You know, I couldn't understand a lot of them. If there were dancers, I don't know what they were really. And then mixed up alien dancers as well. Well, they were part alien dancers and, all number of things. Trailed off the elder in response to the older woman, as if reading another of the lists that he had in front of him. Not the ones that he wanted to use to invite to the family dance show. However, just as different to each other as we are different to each other. You know, like human dancers are. They can be good and bad as well. Well, there's no real difference, claimed the older man. I know what people are like, for goodness sake, said the older woman. I should do by now, after all these decades. I was asking you what your alien experiences were. You said you'd met them, or got on whatever these alien dances were, said the older woman, now sitting with him, a little concerned still with him, still wanting him to be allowed to express these things, if the discussion was therapeutic and perhaps of some use. She didn't want him to rush through it if a potential breakthrough could occur. I didn't call them aliens. Not when I lived on the planet show. No, not for so long. They were like family to me, said the older man. Well, you know, alien family. Not the alien aliens. No, those I never got to meet, really, said the older man. Well, you have an Earth family now, said the mother, looking around her, absorbently. So you don't need to be sad, and you don't need to be sad about losing contact with your alien family. We are your new family now. You know, you can forget about all the star family and planet families, all the alien families. You don't need to go on about all those anymore, because you've met new families and new friends too. So you have an Earth family now, don't you? And you have done for a long time, said the woman, a little sympathetically, slower, although the older man, it wasn't clear, perhaps was quiet and reserved and looked away, perhaps found it a little condescending. You have an Earth mother and an Earth father and an Earth siblings, Earth brothers and Earth sisters, went on the mother. So you don't need any alien parents or to worry about alien parents because there are human parents, went on the mother, saying this to the older man still, who she was still quite concerned about in his strange beliefs. Felt it strange that an older man should be carrying around such weird beliefs at all. Forget all about the alien friends and the alien families. Just forget about those and focus on human friends and the human families, the ones you've made over the years, and especially with us over the last few weeks too. Focus on those because, whatever the alien family were, however important they were to you, they were from a long time ago or far away, and you can't see them now anyway, claimed the mother, not wanting to get into the debate around their existence at all again now, feeling that would provoke far too long a discussion, especially with the impending family show ahead of them both soon. Just forget about those and focus on friends of the earth, family of the earth, and your earth friends, especially all of your human friends, who can be with you here and now, said the mother, and not there and then, hoping that if he could focus more on the earth and on people, that he would gradually move away from these weird alien beliefs, these weird delusional beliefs as she saw it. These fantasies that he'd had, that maybe he was using as some therapy, as some way of coping, she wasn't sure. And one day, perhaps, eventually, if he got close enough to other people, he would give up these alien obsessions that perhaps were just alien substitutes for the people that he'd once known. And his alien illusions, as the mother called them, though behind his back, she called them other things, and still called them alien obsessions to his face though, because she accepted the man had strange dreams and strange ideas of alien places, of course, yet she did not accept that those were true, yet not that he followed them seriously, and she did not think he should take them seriously or speak of them seriously to others. Whatever the strange animal dreams that he might have, those could be genuine, she thought, but something to read within it, not something to take literally and seriously. She was concerned that he was following some of the alien dreams so seriously, and that he spoke of them quite openly and honestly, of alien planets in such detail, and was concerned that he was creating or co-creating with others, and a great many others, a poor or delusional world. Well, many delusional souls, he was co-creating this imaginative artificial world, an alien story of alien people, eating alien foods, dancing alien dances in alien towns where there were alien wars and alien revolutions, alien justice systems, alien schools, alien politics, alien regulations, alien laws, alien religions, alien theologies, and it just went on and on. Alien people, alien animals. He had so many of it, alien friends and alien family. There were the friendly aliens. The old man talked of the friendly aliens often in his imaginative talks to her about his alien dreams. He claimed that's where they all came from originally, an alien dream, and regular alien dreams he'd had too, so he claimed to the concerned mother. And there were the many aliens that saddened him and scared him too, the mysterious aliens that he talked of also. He talked about those things just too long that it did seem delusional and obsessive to the mother, and not just something that was a creative writing project or way of just coping therapeutically perhaps with his feelings. But she wasn't really sure really what it was or why he spent so long with all the alien preoccupations. And she worried greatly the older man was simply wasting his time and energy on imaginative possible alien worlds that might never exist, or that even if they did exist, never existed in that way at all, in the way that they just simply imagined them. Just purely, wildly speculative alien worlds that were nothing like reality and had no relationship to the real world itself, of the here and now of planet Earth and the show Earth and of the show planet Earth that the mother was all about. Was it all just an unnecessary distraction from his problem? Or was it actually a therapeutic way of coping with the problem of his estrangement from other people sometimes? Was it simply groups of people imagining all these alien worlds and alien people after too much time alone and away, isolated away for whatever reason, away from other people too much? The mother had wondered all this about the older man, giving her thoughts about it in an interview with one of the sisters, one of the aunts, when she asked what she thought was the cause of all the alien ideas that the older man had had after many of their discussions had been featured within the show. She had thought that people left alone became alienated alone because they didn't have other people then to communicate with. So the alien substitutes were just a replacement for them that they imagined themselves. The elder man was not happy on hearing this. He had responded by saying, people on their own created imaginative ideas of people most of the time, and that most of the people on their own and isolated never conjured up ideas of alien worlds, but ideas of imaginative peopled worlds and not imaginative alien worlds at all, and that the alien ideas must have an alien origin and not a people origin. He had claimed the vast majority of people isolated did not dream of aliens or talk at great length of aliens either, though perhaps he did admit they never talked about it openly. His claim was that the aliens put the ideas into people. He claimed that people could never imagine these alien worlds themselves, worlds that they never had any contact with. How could they, he reasoned? And that the alien ideas must come from alien worlds and have an alien origin. Can a person really create an alien idea or an alien, something that they have not yet personally experienced themselves? The mother had answered she didn't know about any aliens, had never become personally involved, nor experienced anything of the sort. Neither did she claim to have any dreams of those sort either. Only unfamiliar, strange dreams of the planet she knew. Yes, there were strange people she dreamed of, that's true, but never aliens as such, so she claims. She didn't believe in aliens, of course, herself. She thought people could have some wild, outlandish ideas without having other people around to keep them in check, to hold them to account ideologically, to question them, to try and weigh up whether their beliefs sounded consistent, reliable, fair, believable. With people on their own so long, she still believed someone like the older man was more prone to these wild, outlandish beliefs, and probably he'd been preyed upon by other alienologists that had seen him as a chance to push his own beliefs, and push their beliefs through him too. Perhaps he was victim to some alienologists who'd been using him, but she didn't want to speculate about that openly and provoke the older man more, not knowing if he had been some victim to some alien show, though he never really talked about that much openly to her. Not about experiencing some alienologists, that is, others obsessed with aliens also. Maybe that had inspired the obsessive alien beliefs within him too. Many others were just centered around their fellow man, of course, and didn't center their lives around alien beliefs at all. Why should they? People weren't disciplined by aliens, but by each other. Perhaps alone too much, though, alone without their fellow man. Perhaps they devolved into these weird, crazy alien beliefs, rambled junk thought, jargon, crazy talk. It didn't really make any sense. Strange talk, whatever it was. The mother didn't want to call it those rude names openly, not in front of the alienologist man or the other potential friendly alienologists, those that had studied alien beliefs, didn't want to provoke him or them either. So she kept quiet about her beliefs to that extent that he and the others she suspected were obsessive, and why they were obsessive, she didn't want to say the fullest reasons why. The elder man had said he was talking on behalf of the familiar aliens and the friendly alien guides, not the strange people that she had confused them with. Even if there were some overlap between them, some of them in the stories of the aliens, such were the many discussions of the elder man. Some of those in those actual stories, they had seemed to defend the hypothetical alien worlds, as if there were some potentially real worlds out there, speaking vividly of the world of aliens, of alien worlds, even of alien joy, alien love, alien despairs, and alien suffering too. And they had projected these stories onto humanity, and also of worlds of alien fears and mainly alien desires too over humanity, with even talks of alien invasions of the planet, alien rescues of the planet too, alien studies of the earthlings, and alien programs all about the many different types of earthlings, and even human shows too. The aliens had their hopes and their fears and their dreams about the humans, about the earthlings, and about the wider planet Earth too. And not just about other aliens as well, according to the elder. This is what he'd said before in one of his earlier talks, telling his new family that there are aliens dreaming of them, secretly hoping for them, not even if they aren't dreaming of the aliens could be dreaming of them, nor know what to hope for, nor what to fear. He had claimed this to the mother, but she'd shaken her head, feeling that it was just ridiculous and some rambling of him, speculation, not to be taken serious. It was hard to know, though, really, because she hadn't done that much research either, or read any notes about all the apparent alien phenomenon witnessed, apparently, or allegedly. If he really believed it to that extent, as some others seemed to, no one seemed to take him seriously when he discussed it, or tried to, though, not in the family show yet. So it wasn't greatly looked into them. Except on the family show, the elder man was asked if he believed all aliens could know and about humans themselves, and could think of people, or even dream of people. And he'd said no, he didn't believe that. Some aliens may not even know that humanity exists yet, and may actually think and believe there's no such thing as humanity, whilst other aliens may well have proven and know beyond any doubt that humanity and planet Earth does exist. Other aliens may only have some evidence and may be speculating as to whether humanity and humans really do exist or not. Many aliens were just too busy working, or just too ill, or studying Earth in their early stages, and there were just too many conflicting studies about Earth for many of the aliens perhaps to really know whether Earthlings were genuine, or whether such a thing as people were really real or not, whether the whole thing of humanity wasn't just fictional, fantastical, or whether it wasn't all just speculative humanity and the whole humanity was just made up or just gross exaggerations. Indeed, how could many of the aliens know if they were still learning to study humans? The alienologist had claimed. That was one of his answers, at least anyway, to their questioning. Or they could just find the whole idea of humanity just too far-fetched to believe in. Who knows? Yet there were many aliens who were perhaps open-minded, claimed the alienologist, believing in the possibility of humanity, that humans might well exist, even if there was only some evidence to say that, and speculative evidence that could still be contested. Who knew? There could be a minority that claimed to have met real people, yet who were often not believed by others, that were claimed to be the fantasists, the imaginative thinkers, delusional thinkers, the mentally ill people who believed that there could actually be genuine people and real people that really existed, even though there wasn't a lot of evidence to say that and to prove that to the other aliens. There were the aliens who even wrote long stories, perhaps, and made films about people because they had studied people for a long time with their earthling beliefs that had grown for a long time. Even when their alien communities, the alien families had grown, and they'd met many alien friends too, and they tried to persuade them all that there was a genuine human world, that people were real and existed, and they weren't just fictional, fictitious imaginations, that it wasn't just a delusional world full of delusional people that didn't really exist. They had tried desperately, the aliens, to convince their alien friends of this, claimed the alienologist, saying this from one of his alien stories that he'd read clearly from long ago. So most aliens didn't really dream of people to answer the question that he'd been asked on the family show, because they didn't really believe in people anymore. They didn't know that people really existed anymore. Most aliens didn't know that people existed, never mind dream about them, or want what's best, or want to harm them. They simply just didn't know they existed, or they doubted, or were very skeptical there was such a thing as real people. They thought that there were many other aliens that wrote about people, or made films about people, were really just fictitious people, fantasists, who were just wasting their time and energy and focus, wasting resources on making films about people that weren't even real anyway, making fictitious films about fictitious people living in fictitious worlds, draining on resources, time and energy. Perhaps that's what the aliens thought and speculated to those alien skeptics that never really believed that people existed anyway. So much time spent thinking and wasting about people. Why write all these books about people and make films about people when people might not really exist anyway? When there might not be any real, genuine people? When there was so little evidence to prove beyond doubt that genuine people really existed in a genuine world? The older man had claimed all this could be potentially true of the stories he'd read about these aliens in their potential alien worlds. These are what he claimed, at least, to the families that he'd met there.